Oh dear God, the sheer reality of what the hell is happening with EA continues to surprise us every single week. Josh Brown, they're becoming part of the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund.
There's a lot going on, Scott Tilford. If you did not know somehow, yesterday EA was bought out by a private group for a whopping $55 billion. And like you said, this has been led by a consortium of private investors. One of them is the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund. We've got Silver Lake, and we've got another company called Affinity Partners. And the idea is this deal will go through within the next year. There is still some leeway, like there always is with a deal of this caliber, that it might not happen. But according to the initial reports that I was reading, including over on Bloomberg by Jason Schreier, it would cost EA a lot of money to not go through with this deal.
Right,
not quite $55 billion, but some people were putting it around the $1 billion range. And the idea with this is it's this thing called a leveraged buyout, which I wasn't too familiar until I started researching this yesterday. And I don't know about you, but initially I kind of thought, before I knew who was involved, before I knew what was going on, I thought, maybe this could be a win for EA, you know? Like, EA surely can't get any worse. Surely this can't be as bad as they currently are, right? Well, I feel like that's absolutely wrong, because with it being a leveraged buyout, it has been pointed out by a bunch of people way more credible than I am, that it means that the new owners are essentially taking on some debt to buy the company. So there is a reported number of $20 billion worth of debt that they, as a company, as EA, will be looking to pay off as quickly as they possibly can once this thing is finalized. And while a lot of people we're focusing on just kind of like how big this deal was, Jason Schreier on Blue Sky, in a follow-up to his own reporting, he said, quote, "A lot of people are understandably focused on the Saudi Arabia and Kushner part of this." That's Jared Kushner, who leads that Affinity Partners that I mentioned. But then Schreier went on to say, "But the far bigger immediate impact will come from the new private EA being on the hook for $20 billion in debt. That could mean mass layoffs, more aggressive monetization, and other big cost-cutting measures." And that's the entire quote. So essentially expect to see some pretty big changes in the immediate future once this deal has been finalized, because like Schreier mentions, it'll be all hands on deck focusing on the things that are already profitable to try and shift that debt. So that's sports, which always do well. It's the live services, which do absolutely crazy numbers for EA. And that means that focus could come at the cost of offsetting other assets and studios and IP that the company owns, either closing down studios entirely, doing the mass layoffs that they've already been doing over the past couple of years, or maybe selling off their assets like their IP. Maybe we'll see some franchises get sold that they don't necessarily want to focus on, but they know will still be lucrative to someone else, and so they can offset that debt. Like Jason Schreier mentions, that's probably all on top of just more aggressive monetization generally, which in itself is crazy. EA is already so bad for that. Have you seen Ultimate Team? So them getting more aggressive with monetization just seems impossible, but it definitely can happen. There are some other stuff that I want to get into. There is some other stuff that I want to get into, but I've talked a lot here. That's the general overview of the deal as it sounds, though, with a little bit from Schreier. So how are you feeling about all this, Scott?
I honestly, before we started looking into putting this video together, I feel like I know so little about the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund. I just see that term pop up a lot. Whether, and I know we're going to get to different bits of the wider sort of conversation on them, but yeah, they pop up. They own bits and pieces of Nintendo. They own bits of WWE/TKO, and it's like it seems like they're getting involved in a hell of a lot of places where they otherwise shouldn't be. And the reasons for why are a much larger conversation, which, like I said, we're going to get to. But it's just that idea of the mixed headlines, the mixed messaging around the whole stuff from Andrew Wilson with EA, announcing to the staff members, this is going to free us up. We're going to ostensibly be going private. We're going to have all this freedom, all these different ways that we can operate going forward. But then you look at the reality of the debt that's being that's on the table. It's always billions as well. We're in this realm of just billions billions and billions of dollars. And it's like you said, it'll probably end up falling back on established core IP and established core gameplay loops. And even if the people can stick around long enough to work on those titles anyway, once they survive the long, in regards to like the layoffs and all that kind of stuff, it just seems very messy. And I feel like everything with like I said, the public investment fund is something that I just keep seeing popping up, but I don't feel like there's a really good breakdown of exactly why and exactly how and what it's really for and everything else.
Yeah, it's we'll get to that towards the end because I'm focusing kind of more on the stuff that I understand a little bit more, like the business side of things. But you mentioned Andrew Wilson there, who is the current CEO of EA, and that's something that I forgot to mention. Like, he will be staying on at least in the short term to continue his role as CEO. And like you said, in the press releases that he's released and EA has released, the focus is on let's do things we couldn't do before. Let's push that growth even further. And I think in my naivete, when I saw this, my initial thought was maybe, okay, if they don't have shareholders, maybe they will be not quite as money grubby, but it's essentially going to work the exact same, just with a more focused amount of people that they're arguing with, right? I was thinking about this, and to me, like, one of the closest comparisons that I think our viewers will probably remember that I think this is very much like is the merger between WB, Warner Brothers, and Discovery that happened a few years ago. That, as far as I'm aware, wasn't this leveraged buyout thing, but it was similar in nature because it ended up resulting in a lot of debt that the company had to recoup. And immediately that company went into its worst period ever. Like, even if you are not into movies, even if you are not into the machinations of studio heads and executives, you probably know the name David Zaslav. You probably heard about the likes of Batgirl and Looney Tunes movies being shelved even though they were finished because it was more incentive. There was a bigger incentive for the studio to just cancel them outright, pretend they didn't exist, and essentially have them function as a tax write-off to help them with the debt. There was so much about canceling movies, like I said, writing off those finished ones, cutting ties with filmmakers, pushing into digital, focusing on the core IP. We saw that in gaming where the new gaming executives were saying, listen, we've got 4 major IP. We've got Harry Potter, we've got Game of Thrones, we've got DC and Lord of the Rings, and we're going to just focus on them entirely going forward. I think Mortal Kombat might have been in there as well, to be fair. But yeah, this pushing into digital, focus on the core IP, closing down game studios and kind of selling off assets. That's what we saw immediately. I was doing some more research on why leveraged buyouts aren't necessarily a thing today, because every write-up that I looked at, including that Bloomberg one, said that it's quite rare to see something of this size. This now holds the record for the the biggest buyout of this type. And interestingly, I was looking at the Financial Times and I was looking at that Bloomberg report, and the previous biggest was when Toys R Us was taken over, Scott. Right. And Scott, Toys R Us is now dead. And for millennials out there like yourself and I, we probably lament the closure of that store. And we have a lot of strong associations with that store. And, obviously there were hugely other factors involved, but part of what killed that company was the debt that was taken on. I'm a Man United fan, right? For my sins, you know this. I've talked about it on the podcast. Very good. And if you are unfortunate enough to be a Man United fan, something similar happened with that club. I think it was 2005, about 20 years ago now. That was bought with a leveraged buyout, and a football club that didn't have all that much debt suddenly had all of this debt. And if you look at the trajectory of Man United as a club, as a kind of business within that 20-year period, it's just trending down, Scott. It wasn't good for the company overall. And you might think okay, those are just a couple examples. Those are big examples. It's going to matter who's involved. It's going to matter who's steering the ship. Maybe this won't happen to EA. Maybe this is just all hypothetical. And maybe it will be better than we all think. But In a report by the Financial Times, which was picked up by Insider Gaming, it's already been claimed that the new owners are prioritizing AI usage across the company to, quote, significantly cut EA's operating costs, and this will apparently help, quote, manage a large debt load on a company that historically carried limited net debt, end quote. So, although all of this is hypothetical and we're all like, oh, there might be layoffs, there might be this, there might be that, they're already talking about how they can cut costs with stuff like AI and how they need to address this debt immediately as soon as this deal goes through. So it's I don't want to be pessimistic. I kind of feel ghoulish almost, theorizing over people losing their jobs. That absolutely sucks. But like, just from all of the stuff that I've read, all of the people that I trust who've commented on this, they're all pointing essentially towards the same thing. And even when you look at what the company is actually saying, it's not veiled that they're going to have to cut costs and kind of like streamline the business, as they like to say, going forward. We're so far, as you were describing all of this, and we're thinking about billions of dollars changing hands and like private investments and then like tanking companies over time and everything else. We've gotten so far away from just the passion of the creative just making a video game. Just sort of like it's that thing of like the amount of different machinations that are now in flux to be able to make the next FIFA adjacent game like FC or whatever it is, or the next Battlefield or something like that. The amount of billions of dollars and like then that wider conversation, not to push it in that direction again, it's just what I go to in terms of all the PIF stuff, but all the human rights treatments and everything else. It's like that is now part of the conversation on just making some video games, just making some entertainment. It's kind of ludicrous. I wonder what the seeds of this were in terms of how the investment happened, like whether it was someone like Andrew Wilson approaching like the PIF, or whether it came from the other way, because they, like you said, like they are invested in a ton of different companies and different mediums and everything, and the wider conversation again is because they're ostensibly trying to change their public image, the global image, in regards to the civil rights violations that happen in Saudi and in general. But I wonder if this is Wilson going like, yeah, I'm staying on for now because I'm getting a massive paycheck, and then I'll just see you guys and homer through the hedge later. But I don't know why you would do this, and the AI stuff is just so crazy. That's such a thought experiment, or such a market experiment of like, what is the lowest quality bar of product they can put out that enough people will buy to satiate the demand and satiate the expectations, because the quality is going to go through the floor. Like any AI use, quantity goes up, quality goes down. Like that whole thing is like, it's going to be a few years of an experiment to see just what they can get away with. Definitely. And whether the average person picks up on it. Like the average person probably will see something like this news story like on BBC or Sky News or something like that, because it just is that big, like when Activision Blizzard got acquired. But I don't, whether that sticks in their mind, whether they know what that means, like over time they're still going to pick up the latest video games, like Battlefield's out in a week or so. The deal doesn't close till next year, but yeah, it makes me wonder how it impacts the literal quality of the titles, and if people who have been working on these franchises for this long can even turn something around again. Yeah, for me, it makes me worry about studios like BioWare and yes, the people within them, because even under the current EA model, like we have talked loads this year about the response to Dragon Age the Veilguard being EA moving a lot of the developers away from BioWare itself and having them work on other projects, and who knows how that's going to already impact the next Mass Effect game, if that even happens. What happens to projects like that are already kind of on the line or having difficulties, let's say, when this new ownership kind of comes into play? You mentioned something there that was really interesting about like why now, and a lot of the people that I've been reading again in that Financial Times article on Insider Gaming, Bloomberg, etc., they kind of point towards the fact that the gaming as like a growing medium is not in that boom period it was a few years ago, where it was just exponentially, the graph was going up every single year. And the sort of situation EA is in right now, like you said, they're just on the cusp of releasing Battlefield 6, which is the most hyped Battlefield in quite some time. They've just like got the record live service revenue that's incoming. They're coming off a few hits like Apex Legends getting back on its feet, and they've already made kind of cuts across the board to increase their kind of like profit share, if you will. So the position they're in right now, I imagine they're looking at like, how much can we grow this across the next few years? They probably can a little bit, but I guess they're just thinking we've kind of peaked in terms of our value. Maybe if we sell now, we can get as much money out of this company like as possible, and we can leverage it for as much as possible. That's a lot of people's theories, because it kind of makes sense with the way that the gaming industry is trending generally, in EA's roadmap and lineup. You know, they've just released the latest EA FC game. The change to that, by the way, it blows. I still can't stop calling it FIFA. It's not FIFA.
Totally.
But it is FIFA. You know what I mean? So they've just released FIFA. They've got Battlefield 6 on the horizon. Like I said, stuff like Apex is doing well. So I do think they've just gone, well, this is as much as we're ever going to be worth. Let's sell now. But let's finally get to one of the main bodies of this merger, which is the public investment fund that you mentioned. And yeah, that is like such a huge topic that is going to be tough to get into in the final minutes of this video. But there are lots of explanations out there, because like you said, this isn't like the first major buyout or kind of investment from that fund. They have already got a 10% stake in EA before they did this merger, so they've already been involved in gaming, like you mentioned, with the likes of Nintendo, etc., etc. It was rumored a few years ago that they were in conversation with Embracer. They already had a deal with Embracer, but can you remember when Embracer went on that kind of like massive culling spree because a deal fell through? It was reported that was apparently with the public investment fund, and that fell through, maybe because they were looking for a bigger studio to buy into fully like this. I don't know. But yeah, essentially they've kind of been moving like Tencent have recently. And what I mean by that is they've kind of just they've started getting stakes in a lot of different companies and a lot of different publishers and a lot of different developers and whatnot. And you've seen like, you know, a couple percent here, a couple percent there, and then that's kind of like just growing as the years get down the line. Like you might be shocked at how many different studios that the public investment fund is like currently has like a good stake in. Like the same with Tencent, like that has a lot of different stakes in different companies and stuff, and we kind of are seeing like all of these different companies like slowly grow their influence. Like Tencent had that deal with Ubisoft last year, which isn't quite as big as this, but is still absolutely huge, and like they're going into business together in a much bigger way than they have before. Obviously, like the difference here with the PIF is that it's just controversial because it's engaging in this like massive PR campaign. Essentially, like they've already come under criticism within the sports world for sports washing to a massive degree, because like you said, you know, they've got this record of extensive human rights issues and violations. And you've got them buying into sports in a major way. You mentioned wrestling, you know. If you go over on the wrestling channel, it'll no doubt have some coverage of the next WrestleMania after the next one being held in Saudi Arabia, you know? They've obviously had a long-term deal with that company for a while now, but again, it's like this growing influences. It's these bigger and bigger deals. They bought, going back to football for just a brief second, but they bought into Newcastle United a few years ago, again, to huge controversy, because it's this idea of getting into all of these different elements of culture and media and whatnot in an attempt to associate Saudi Arabia and that country with like these things that people love, and these huge entertainment things, and often like progressive entertainment things, and then using that as a way to change the image of the entire country and whatnot. But yeah, it's a lot, you know. It's a lot going on, my friend.
It's $55 billion worth of jangling the keys over here. Look at all this. Look at all this stuff we've got over here. Meanwhile, various things that we can't even mention the words of on YouTube, otherwise the video will get demonetized, continue to happen every few months in the country. It's very weird. It's very messy, and more in reporting will obviously happen as things start to come together. And the deal, like you said, is meant to go through next year. But a hell of a way for EA to go, and the amount of IP that the PIF just acquired. I can't even be optimistic that maybe we get a new Burnout job. I doubt it, but fingers crossed that the people who are actually putting the hard work in and working at the different game dev teams can put something out that they would like to.